If your own sister demanded half of your mother's inheritance, not for medical bills or a home, but for a $75,000 vineyard wedding, what would you do? Would you sell the house your mom died in, just so your sister could have a drone photographer? Or would you do what I did? I quietly hit record, gathered every receipt of their greed, and walked into court with enough evidence to turn their fairy tale wedding into their worst financial nightmare. My name is Sydney Hernandez. I am 39 years old, and I have spent the last 15 years of my life working as an emergency room nurse at Silverbridge General Hospital. In the ER, you develop a sixth sense for disaster. You learn to recognize the subtle shift in the air pressure right before a patient crashes, or the specific, frantic pitch of a scream that signals an arterial bleed rather than a panic attack. I know what bad news feels like before it is spoken. I know the weight of it. And sitting there in that restaurant, surrounded by crystal glassware and waiters who moved like ghosts, I felt that familiar heaviness settling in my chest. The restaurant was one of those places where the menu had no prices and the staff outnumbered the patrons. It was the kind of establishment where, if you stood up to use the restroom for 2 minutes, someone would swoop in to refold your napkin into a pristine swan before you returned. It made me itch. I was used to vending machine coffee and scrubs that had seen things most people would pay not to imagine. Here, the silence was aggressive. I ran my thumb over the condensation on my water glass, watching the door, waiting for the storm to make landfall. Then they walked in. My sister, Harper, looked like she was walking through a filter. Her hair was a cascade of perfectly highlighted waves, her skin glowing with that specific sheen that only comes from expensive facials and zero manual labor. She was wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and her nails were manicured into sharp, pristine almonds. Holding her arm was Landon Pierce. Landon was everything I found exhausting about the modern male ego wrapped in a navy blue suit that was a little too tight in the shoulders. He was a self-proclaimed investment strategist, though I had never been entirely clear on what he actually strategized. He walked with the swagger of a man who believes the world owes him a standing ovation just for showing up. They sat down across from me, bringing a cloud of expensive cologne and floral perfume that instantly overpowered the smell of the fresh bread on the table. "Sydney," Harper squealed, leaning across the table to air-kiss my cheek, careful not to actually touch her skin to mine. "Oh my God, you look tired. Are you sleeping? You look like you need a spa week." "I worked a double shift yesterday," I said, taking a sip of water. "Trauma unit was full. Someone tried to juggle chainsaws." Landon chuckled, a dry, hollow sound. "Blue-collar heroism, admirable, really, but you have to think about the long-term toll on your biological assets. Sydney, burnout is a depreciating factor." I stared at him. "Hello to you too. Landon?" He waved a hand dismissively, signaling for a waiter who appeared instantly to pour sparkling water. "Just saying, optimization isn't just for portfolios, it is for life." We ordered, or rather, they ordered. Harper asked for something with foam and emulsions. Landon ordered a steak with the authority of a man who wasn't paying the bill. I ordered the cheapest salad I could find, my stomach already knotting too tight for food. For the first 20 minutes, Landon dominated the conversation. He spoke in a stream of buzzwords that sounded like a late-night infomercial for a get-rich-quick seminar. He talked about market volatility, liquidity events, and leveraging debt as a tool for growth. He used the phrase paradigm shift 3 times before the appetizers arrived. It was a performance, and I was the captive audience. He was trying to project an image of immense wealth and competence, but I work in triage. I know how to look past the symptoms to find the disease. He was trying too hard. "Anyway," Harper cut in, placing her hand over Landon's on the white tablecloth. The diamond on her finger caught the light, a ring I suspected was financed on credit. "We didn't ask you here just to catch up. We have huge news." "Sid," I braced myself. "Okay, what is it?" "We found the venue," she breathed, her eyes widening with genuine, terrifying excitement. "It is perfect. It is not in Napa, because honestly, Napa is so overdone. You know, it is this exclusive boutique vineyard closer to the Bay Area. It has these rolling hills, ancient oaks, and a tasting room that is basically a glass cube overlooking the valley. It sounds nice, I said neutrally. Nice? It is a vision, Sydney, she corrected. We have it all planned out. We are going to have white majestic tents with silk draping, a 12-piece live orchestra playing modern covers, a 7-course farm-to-table tasting menu with wine pairings for every course, and for the exit, cold fireworks. They are safe for the vines but look spectacular in photos. It is going to be my childhood dream come true. She looked at me, beaming, waiting for me to validate her fantasy. It sounds very expensive, I said. Landon cleared his throat, straightening his tie. Quality requires capital, but you have to look at it as an investment in our brand. This wedding isn't just a party, it is a networking event. It establishes our social standing. Right, I said. So, congratulations. I am happy you found a place. Landon leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table, his face composing itself into a mask of serious business acumen. Here is the situation. Sydney, to lock this down, and to execute the vision at the level Harper deserves. We are looking at a budget variance. Liquidity is a bit tied up in my other ventures right now because of the market correction last quarter. I put my fork down. What are you saying? We need $75,000, Landon said. He said it without blinking. He said it like he was asking for salt. I actually laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that made the couple at the next table glance over. $75,000, Landon. I am a nurse. I don't have that kind of money sitting in a checking account. We know you don't have it in cash, Harper said quickly, her voice taking on a wheedling, childish tone I remembered from when we were teenagers. But you have the house. The air left the room. Mom had been gone for 6 weeks. 42 days. I was still finding her hairpins in the sofa cushions. I still caught myself picking up the phone to call her when I saw a bird she would have liked. The wound was not just fresh. It was open and bleeding. The house, I repeated, my voice dropping an octave. It is a simple asset utilization, Landon explained, pulling a pen out of his pocket and beginning to draw a diagram on a napkin that was probably linen worth $50. The house is paid off. It is sitting there, dead equity. If you sell it, or even just take out a home equity line of credit, you could release the capital. We need $75,000 for the wedding, and frankly, a bit more for a honeymoon to the Maldives. But we are willing to compromise at 75. You want me to mortgage Mom's house so you can have cold fireworks? I asked, my hands trembling under the table. It is about fairness, Sydney. Harper interrupted, her voice rising. Mom left the house to you. The whole house. How is that fair? I am her daughter too. I deserve half of that value. I am just asking for my share in advance so I can have my day. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, for the last 3 years of Mom's life, as the cancer slowly ate away at her vitality. I was the one who was there. I moved in. I cut my hours at the hospital, taking a pay cut that devastated my savings. I was the one who changed her sheets when she was too weak to move. I was the one who crushed her pills into applesauce. I was the one who held her hand through the night terrors and the morphine hallucinations. Harper visited on Christmas. She sent flowers on Mother's Day. When Mom called her, Harper was always in a meeting or at a retreat. She couldn't handle the negative energy of a dying woman. She came to the funeral in sunglasses she never took off and left before the reception to catch a flight to Cabo. Mom knew exactly what she was doing. The will stated explicitly that the house was mine. It wasn't an oversight, it was a thank you. And it was an apology for Harper's neglect. The house is not an asset to be liquidated. Landon, I said, keeping my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. It is my home. It was Mom's home. And Harper, you know exactly why Mom left it to me. Harper's face twisted. Because you manipulated her. You were there all the time, whispering in her ear, making her think I didn't care. You capitalized on her dementia. She didn't have dementia, I snapped. She had pancreatic cancer. Her mind was sharp until the very end. She knew exactly who was holding her hand and who was posting latte art on Instagram while she was dying. Landon sighed. A loud, theatrical exhalation of patience being tested. Let's not get emotional. This is a business proposal. Family helping family. If you give us the $75,000, we will consider any claim on the rest of the estate settled. It is a clean break. Otherwise, things get messy. I looked at the two of them. The greed was radiating off them like heat waves. They didn't see a home full of memories. They saw a piggy bank they could smash open to pay for a party. I took a deep breath. I tried to find the part of me that was a sister, the part that remembered playing dress-up in the backyard. Look, I am not selling the house. I am not taking out a loan against it. That is not happening. Period. Harper opened her mouth to scream, but I held up a hand. However, I continued, I am willing to give you a wedding gift. I have some savings. I can give you $15,000. That is a lot of money for me. It is everything I have saved for a new car and an emergency fund. You can have it for the wedding. Silence hung over the table for 3 seconds. Then Landon laughed. It was a cold, ugly sound. $15,000, Sydney. Be serious. That wouldn't even cover the floral arrangements. That is insulting. Harper's eyes welled up with instant, weaponized tears. You are so selfish. You have always been selfish. You sit on that big house all alone like a dragon on a pile of gold. And you offer me crumbs. I am your sister. This is the most important day of my life. And you are trying to ruin it because you are jealous that I found love, and you are almost 40 and alone. The words hit me like physical slaps. Jealous alone. I wasn't alone. I had Elliot. I had a life built on substance, not smoke and mirrors. $15,000 is my final offer, I said quietly. And honestly, after that comment, I am tempted to withdraw it. Keep your charity, Landon sneered, his mask of corporate politeness slipping entirely. If you want to play hardball, Sydney, we can play hardball. You think that will is ironclad? You think we can't find a judge who sees the inequity in one sister getting $1 million property and the other getting nothing? Mom didn't leave you nothing. Harper, I said. She left you her jewelry collection. She left you the bonds. You cashed them out 2 weeks after the funeral to put a down payment on a Tesla. That was my money, Harper shrieked. A waiter paused nearby, looking concerned. The house is the real money. You stole it from me. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. This wasn't a conversation. This was a shakedown. There was no reasoning with entitlement this deep. It was a bottomless pit that would swallow everything I had if I let it. I stood up. My legs felt steady, grounded. I am done, I said. Enjoy your lunch. I am sure you can figure out how to optimize your assets to pay for it. I reached into my purse, pulled out a $20 bill, and dropped it on the table. For the sparkling water. If you walk away, Landon called out, his voice low and menacing. Do not expect an invite, and do not expect us to go easy on you. You are dead to me, Harper sobbed, grabbing a napkin to dab at her dry eyes. Do not come crawling back when you realize you have no family left. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back at the white tablecloths or the shocked diners. I walked straight out the heavy glass doors into the bright, harsh California sunlight. My heart was racing, but my mind was ice cold. As I reached my car, I slid my hand into the pocket of my scrubs. My fingers brushed against the cool metal of my phone. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. The voice memo app was open. The timer was running. Recording 42 minutes 15 seconds. It was a habit from the night shift. When a doctor shouted a complex order during a code blue, or a patient was delirious and confessing to something dangerous, I hit record. It was how I protected my license. It was how I remembered the details when the adrenaline wore off. I had pressed the button the moment I saw them walk into the restaurant. I stopped the recording and hit save. I labeled the file Lunch with Harper and Landon. They wanted a war for a $75,000 wedding, They had no idea what they had just started. I got into my car, locked the doors, and drove home to the house my mother trusted me to protect. The house was quiet when I unlocked the front door, a stark contrast to the chaotic noise rattling around in my skull. This was the house I had grown up in, the house where I had nursed my mother through her final months, and now, the house my sister wanted to liquidate for a party. The smell of garlic and roasting rosemary drifted from the kitchen. It was the scent of safety. Elliot was at the stove. He looked up as I entered, his glasses sliding slightly down the bridge of his nose. Elliot Ward is a forensic accountant. While I spend my days stopping people from bleeding out physically, Elliot spends his stopping corporations and individuals from bleeding out financially. He tracks hidden assets, uncovers embezzlement schemes, and reconstructs shattered financial histories for divorce courts and fraud trials. He sees the world in ledgers and audit trails. He is the most grounded person I know. "You look like you went 12 rounds with a defibrillator," he said, turning down the heat on the burner. "How was the lunch?" I didn't say a word. I just walked over to the kitchen island, pulled my phone out of my pocket, and set it on the counter. My hands were still shaking slightly, a residual tremor from the adrenaline spike at the restaurant. "I need you to listen to something," I said. Elliot wiped his hands on a towel and leaned in. I hit play. The tinny sound of the restaurant ambiance filled our kitchen, followed by the clinking of silverware and Landon's voice, smooth and overly confident. Elliot listened in silence. He didn't frown. He didn't gasp. He just tilted his head, his eyes narrowing with the same intense focus he used when scanning a spreadsheet for a decimal error. He listened to Landon talk about asset optimization and liquidity events. He listened to Harper demand the house. He listened to the threats. When the recording ended with the sound of my car door slamming, Elliot stayed quiet for a long moment. "Play the part about the portfolio again," he said. "Minute Mark 12. I scrolled back and played it. Landon's voice boasted about market volatility and leveraging debt for growth. Elliot let out a short, dry huff of breath. He is using the terminology wrong. He is stringing together buzzwords he probably heard on a podcast. Leveraging debt for growth in the context of a wedding isn't a strategy. Sydney, it is just spending money you do not have. He said, "He is an investment strategist," I said, leaning against the counter, feeling the exhaustion seep into my bones. He acted like he was doing me a favor by offering to sell my house. "I do not trust people who call themselves independent investment consultants without a firm attached to their name," Elliot said, walking past me toward the living room where his laptop sat open on the coffee table. "It is usually a fancy way of saying unemployed day trader. Let's see who Landon Pierce really is." I sat on the sofa next to him, watching his fingers fly across the keyboard. This was Elliot in his element. He wasn't angry yet. He was curious. It was the curiosity of a predator sensing weakness in the herd. "First, we check the basics," Elliot muttered. "Public records are beautiful things. People think their lives are private. But if you have ever signed a lease, bought a car, or been sued, there's a paper trail." He logged into a database he used for work, a paid service that aggregated public records from courthouses across the country. He typed in Landon James Pierce. The screen populated with a list. "Okay," Elliot said, scrolling down. "We have an address in the Marina District. Fancy. But wait." He clicked on a subfolder. "Here is a civil judgment from 18 months ago." I leaned in, squinting at the dense legal text. "What does it say?" "He was sued by a landlord in San Diego." Elliot translated, his voice flat. "Eviction proceedings for failure to pay rent, 3 months of arrears. The judgment was for $12,000. He never paid it. It went to collections." "12,000, I asked. "But he drives a Mercedes. He wears a Rolex. Leased and likely fake, or bought on credit," Elliot said. "Let's look at his credit profile. I cannot pull his actual FICO score without his permission. That would be illegal. But I can see liens and judgments." He opened another tab. "Here we go. He has 3 separate judgments from credit card companies in the last 4 years. American Express sued him for $18,000, Visa for $14,000. He settles them for pennies on the dollar or ignores them until they garnish wages. But since he is self-employed, there are no wages to garnish. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. So he is broke. He is worse than broke, Elliot said, typing furiously again. He is insolvent. He is living on a float, using new debt to pay interest on old debt. It is a Ponzi scheme of one. He told me he had a startup, I said, remembering the confident way Landon had spoken about his ventures. He said it was acquired. Elliot found the business registration. Pierce Capital Partners, LLC. Registered 3 years ago. Dissolved by the state last year for failure to pay franchise taxes. There was no acquisition. Sydney. The state shut him down because he couldn't pay the $800 annual fee to keep the LLC active. Oh my God, I whispered. Harper thinks he is a genius. She thinks he is rich. Harper sees what she wants to see, Elliot said. He clicked on another link, this one leading to a deeper court repository. This gets darker. Look at this filing from last year. It was a civil complaint. Doe v. Pierce. What is this? He was sued for misrepresentation of funds and breach of fiduciary duty. Elliot read, scanning the legibility. Basically, he convinced a private individual to give him $50,000 for an exclusive pre-IPO opportunity. The opportunity didn't exist. The money vanished. He settled out of court to avoid a fraud conviction. The settlement includes a non-disclosure agreement, so we cannot see the details, but the filing itself is public record. He swindled someone, I said, the reality sinking in. He is a con artist. He is a low-level grifter, Elliot corrected. He isn't even a good one. A good one wouldn't have this much dirty laundry hanging out in the open. Elliot opened a new window and pulled up Landon's Instagram page. It was a curated gallery of wealth. There was Landon posing next to a private jet, probably just parked on a tarmac he walked onto. Landon holding a glass of cognac in a hotel lobby. Landon and Harper on a boat. Look at the dates, Elliot pointed out. This photo of the new watch posted 3 days after the American Express judgment was finalized. He is buying things to project success so he can find new victims to fund the lifestyle. It is a cycle. And now the victim is me, I said. Or rather, Mom's house. Exactly, Elliot said. The wedding isn't just a party. Sid, it is a cover. They need that $75,000 to plug the holes in his sinking ship. If they get access to the equity in this house, they won't stop at the wedding costs. They will drain it dry. I closed my eyes, rubbing my temples. I want to believe she doesn't know. Harper is vain, and she can be selfish, but she is my sister. She cannot know he is a fraud. She probably thinks he is just having a bad month. You are making excuses for her, Elliot said gently. She is 34 years old. She lives with him. She sees the mail. She sees the collections calls. You cannot live with a man who is drowning in $50,000 of credit card debt and not notice the water rising. I need to be sure, I said. I need to know if she is a victim or an accomplice. Elliot nodded. You recorded the lunch? Did she call you afterwards? She left me a voicemail while I was driving home. I said. I haven't listened to it yet. Play it, Elliot said. Let's analyze the data we have. I pulled up the voicemail. Harper's voice filled the room, thick with tears and aggression. Sydney, I cannot believe you walked out on us. You embarrassed me in front of the staff. You are so cruel. Landon is trying to help us. He is trying to secure our future. I spoke to him, and he said we can still fix this. We can just get the house reappraised. Maybe take a small loan. Just call me back. Landon says if you do not agree to sell, there are other legal avenues we can take. He says if you do not want to do this the easy way, there are other ways to force you. Just do not be difficult. Mom would want us to be happy. The message ended. Elliot looked at me. Did you hear it? Hear what? The shift, Elliot said. She starts with guilt. You embarrassed me. Then she moves to bargaining. Just a small loan. But then she drops the hammer. Landon says there are other ways to force you. That is not a sister asking for help. That is a threat laundered through a third party. She is repeating what he told her, I argued weakly. She is complicit, Sydney, Elliot said firmly. She is adopting his strategy. She knows they need the money, and she doesn't care where it comes from. She is willing to threaten legal action against her own sister to get it. He turned back to the computer. I want to check one more thing. I saw a reference to a specific debt collector in his file. It is a firm that usually handles higher-risk debt. What does that mean? It means gambling debts, Elliot said. Casinos and bookies often sell their bad debt to specific agencies because they are aggressive. He typed in a few more search queries, cross-referencing Landon's previous addresses with known associates of the debt collection agency. It took him 10 minutes of digging through obscure court filings in Nevada. Then he stopped. He turned the laptop screen toward me. There it is, he said softly. On the screen was a civil complaint filed in Clark County, Nevada, just 4 months ago. The Onyx Group versus Landon Pierce. The Onyx Group is a holding company for a chain of off-strip casinos, Elliot explained. The complaint alleges unpaid markers totaling $42,000. He has a gambling problem. Sydney, that is where the money is going. That is why he is desperate. I stared at the screen. $42,000, plus the credit cards, plus the rent, plus the fake startup. He needs the $75,000 to clear the books. I realized, the wedding is just the vehicle. If I gave them the money, half of it would go straight to a casino in Nevada. And the other half would go to Visa, Elliot added. Harper wouldn't get her cold fireworks. She would get a husband who is not in jail, for a few more months at least. I looked around my living room. I looked at the armchair where Mom used to sit and knit while watching her soap operas. I looked at the photos on the mantel, me and Harper as kids, smiling, before money and resentment grew between us like weeds. Mom had known. I realized it with a jolt that nearly knocked the wind out of me. Mom had always been cold toward Landon. She never explicitly said why, just that she didn't trust a man who smiled with his mouth but not his eyes. She had insisted on keeping her finances strictly separate from Harper's influence. She had warned me, in her own way, when she handed me the deed to the house months before she died. Keep this safe. Sydney, it is yours. Do not let anyone take it from you. She wasn't just protecting me from the housing market. She was protecting the family legacy from the black hole that was Landon Pierce. She knew, I said to Elliot. Mom knew he was a fraud. Smart woman, Elliot said. He closed the laptop, the glow of the screen fading, leaving us in the warm, dim light of the kitchen. So, now we know the battlefield. We are not dealing with a heartbroken sister and her ambitious fiancé. We are dealing with a desperate gambler and his enabler who are cornered by debt. They are going to come for me, I said. They are desperate. Yes, Elliot said, taking my hand. His grip was warm and solid. They will come for you, but we have the receipts, and we are going to be ready. I looked at the blank screen of my phone. The recording of the lunch was safe. The files Elliot had found were saved. I felt a hardness settle over my heart, a layer of protective armor encasing the grief I had been carrying for weeks. Print it all out, I said. Every judgment, every lien, every debt. If they want to sue me, if they want to drag this into the light, I will make sure everyone sees exactly what is hiding in the dark. Elliot nodded and hit print. The hum of the printer in the home office started up, a mechanical sound of war drums beginning to beat. 3 days after the lunch that ended with a voice recording and a $20 bill on the table, my phone rang. It was Sunday morning. The sun was streaming through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, a peaceful scene that felt like a lie the moment I saw the caller ID. It was Aunt Melinda. Melinda was my mother's older sister, a woman who believed that volume was a substitute for validity. She lived in Arizona and had not visited my mother once during the last 6 months of her illness, citing her delicate constitution and intolerance for hospitals. Yet, She had somehow appointed herself the family matriarch and moral arbiter. The second mom was in the ground. I slid my thumb across the screen to answer. "Hello, Aunt Melinda." "I want to know how you sleep at night," she barked. There was no greeting, no preamble. Her voice was a serrated blade. I gripped the edge of the granite countertop. "Excuse me." "Your sister called me in tears," Melinda shouted. I could hear the static crackle of her landline. "She told me everything, Sydney. She told me how you sat there in that fancy restaurant, eating a steak, and told her you hoped she would end up homeless. She told me you laughed at her when she asked for a small loan to pay for her wedding venue." The distortion of reality was so severe it almost gave me vertigo. I hadn't eaten a steak. I had ordered a salad I didn't touch. I hadn't laughed. I had offered $15,000 of my own hard-earned money. "That is not what happened," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Harper asked me to mortgage Mom's house to give her $75,000. I offered her $15,000 from my savings, and she stormed out." "Do not lie to me," Melinda screamed. "Harper told me you have been holding that house over her head like a weapon since the funeral. She said you are jealous because Landon is successful, and you are stuck changing bedpans. She said you want to see her fail. My God. Sydney, I knew you were cold, but I did not think you were cruel. To force your own baby sister to go to a loan shark just to pay for flowers." "Loan shark," I repeated. "Melinda, Landon has over $40,000 in gambling debt. They are not going to a loan shark for flowers. They are already drowning." "How dare you slander that young man?" she shrieked. "He is an investment banker. Harper told me how you make up lies about him because you are bitter. You are a thief. Sydney, you manipulated your mother when she was on morphine to steal that inheritance, and now you are hoarding it while your sister suffers. You are rot in this family tree." The line went dead. She had hung up on me. I stood there, the silence ringing in my ears. I felt sick. It wasn't just the anger. It was the efficiency. Harper had struck first. She had taken the truth, shattered it, and reassembled the pieces into a mosaic where she was the martyr and I was the monster. I opened my phone to call my cousin Jenna, Melinda's daughter, thinking maybe I could reason with the younger generation. That was when I saw the notification. "You have been removed from Hernandez family updates. You have been removed from cousin's Christmas planning. You have been removed from Mom's memorial group." One by one, the digital doors were slamming in my face. I opened Facebook. The first thing on my feed was a status update from Jenna. Posted 20 minutes ago. "It is heartbreaking when a tragedy reveals people's true colors. Money really is the root of all evil. Hug your loved ones tight and remember that family is about support, not greed." Family first toxic people. There were no names, but there didn't need to be. The comments were a chorus of sympathy. "So sorry you are dealing with this, hun. Some people just take and take. Karma will get them." I felt a cold sweat prickling on my neck. I was being erased. My history of caring for Mom, my years of hosting Thanksgiving, my financial support of Harper during her finding herself phase in her 20s, all of it was being overwritten by a narrative crafted by a desperate woman and a con artist. But the family was just the first front of the war. 2 days later. I was at work. It was a Tuesday, usually a chaotic day in the ER, but the rhythm felt off. Nurses stopped talking when I walked into the break room. Orderlies looked at their shoes. I assumed it was just my paranoia, the residue of the family drama bleeding into my professional life. Then my supervisor, Dr. Henderson, called me into his office. Dr. Henderson was a good man. He had been the chief of emergency medicine for 10 years, and we had worked side by side through train wrecks, flu epidemics, and mass casualty events. He looked tired. He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Sydney," he said, rubbing his eyes, "you know I do not put much stock in online noise. People get angry about wait times or parking fees and they lash out on the internet. It comes with the territory." "What is it?" I asked, my stomach dropping. He turned his monitor around. "This was posted this morning. Compliance flagged it immediately. It was a Google review for Silverbridge General Hospital. 1 star. The username was Justice for Family 4U4. The review read, "I would be very careful trusting Nurse Sydney H. in the ER. She puts on a nice face, but she has zero moral compass. She stole her own dying mother's inheritance and left her sister destitute. If she treats her own blood like that, stealing money and lying to the elderly, imagine what she is doing with your loved one's medication. A woman who can watch her sister cry over money she stole is not someone who should be saving lives." I stared at the screen. The words swam before my eyes. "This is a lie," I whispered. "Dr. Henderson, this is my sister, or her fiancé." "I assumed as much," he said gently, turning the screen back. "It is personal. It attacks your character, not your medical competence directly, but it draws a line that makes the hospital liable if we ignore it. Imagine what she is doing with your medication. That is the line that worries HR." "I have never mishandled a patient," I said, my voice trembling. "My record is spotless." "I know that. Sydney," he said firmly, "I have watched you work for a decade. I know you are ethical. I know you are one of the best nurses I have. But this is out there. We have flagged it for removal as a conflict of interest and harassment. But Google is slow until it is down. HR wants me to keep you on non-narcotic duty, just to cover our bases." I felt like I had been slapped. "Non-narcotic duty. You are putting me on probation." "It is not probation," he insisted. "It is protection. If someone claims you stole their Percocet tomorrow, and this review is up, it looks like a pattern. We are protecting you. But Sydney, you need to fix this. Whatever is happening at home, it is bleeding into the hospital. Do not let them destroy your career." I walked out of his office feeling numb. They had crossed the line. They weren't just coming for the house anymore. They were coming for my livelihood. If I lost my job, I couldn't pay the taxes or the insurance on the house. I would be forced to sell. It was a siege strategy. I went home that night and collapsed on the sofa. Elliot was already there, his laptop open. He didn't ask how my day was. He just handed me a glass of wine and turned his screen toward me. "Do not look if you are not ready," he warned. "Show me," I said. It was Instagram. Harper had posted a photo. It was an old picture of us. Maybe from when I was 10 and she was 5. I was holding her on my hip, both of us smiling in the backyard of the house, the very house she was now trying to seize. The lighting was nostalgic, the filter soft and warm. The caption read, "Miss my big sister. I remember when she used to protect me. I wish money hadn't changed her. I wish she remembered that people matter more than property. Mom loved us both. But I feel like I lost them both the day Mom died." Broken Heart Sisters, Greed. It had 400 likes. The comments were a cesspool. "Money changes people. Babe. Stay strong. Wow. She sounds toxic. Cut her off. Imagine choosing a house over your family. Disgusting. Karma comes for everyone." I scrolled through the hate. Strangers. People who didn't know me. Didn't know I had wiped my mother's chin when she couldn't swallow. Didn't know I had paid Harper's rent 3 times in her 20s. They saw a sad, pretty girl in a designer dress crying on the internet, and they sharpened their pitchforks. "Do not reply," Elliot said, his voice cutting through the fog in my brain. "Do not comment. Do not make a fake account to defend yourself. That is what they want. They want engagement. They want you to look unstable. They are destroying my reputation, Elliot," I said, tears finally spilling over. "My boss saw a review calling me a thief today. I got restricted duties." Elliot's face hardened. "They crossed the professional line." "Yes." "Good," Elliot said. It was a terrifying word. "That makes it defamation per se. Damages to your professional standing are easier to prove than hurt feelings. We document it, screenshot everything, the review, the timestamp, the URL, the IP address, if we can get a subpoena later. Every comment Harper likes, every lie she replies to with a thank you for the support heart emoji. She is endorsing the libel." He spent the next 3 hours silently capturing evidence. saving files into a folder he had named Operation Scorched Earth. But the internet is not a sealed container. It leaks. 2 days later. I was in the supermarket. I was buying soup and cat food, trying to feel normal. I was standing in the checkout line, staring at the tabloids, when I felt eyes on me. I turned. A woman was standing there. I recognized her vaguely, the daughter of a patient I had treated for a hip fracture a few months ago, Mrs. Gable. "Excuse me," the woman said. She wasn't smiling. "Are you Sydney the nurse?" "Yes," I said, forcing a polite smile. "Hi, how is your mother doing?" "She is fine," the woman said. She didn't move closer. She stepped back, actually, creating a deliberate distance between us. Her eyes darted to my cart, then back to my face. "I saw your sister's post. My friend shared it." My blood ran cold. The fluorescent lights of the supermarket suddenly felt like interrogation lamps. "Oh," I said, it is a complicated family situation." "She said you took everything," the woman said, her voice loud enough that the cashier paused, scanning my items. "She said you left her with nothing for her wedding. Is that true?" I looked around. People were watching. The cashier, the man bagging groceries, a teenager buying gum. I was standing there in my scrubs, holding a can of tomato soup, being put on trial in the middle of aisle 4. "There are 2 sides to every story," I said, my voice tight, "and I am not going to discuss my mother's will in a grocery store." "Well," the woman sniffed, pulling her purse tighter to her body, "I just think it is shameful. You seemed so nice at the hospital. I guess you never really know people." She turned her back on me. I left my groceries on the belt. I walked out of the store, my face burning with a humiliation so deep it felt like a physical burn. I sat in my car and shook. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to Harper's apartment and shake her until she admitted she was lying. I wanted to post the recording of Landon threatening me, but I heard Elliot's voice in my head. "Wait, build the case. Do not interrupt your enemy when they are making a mistake." And they were making mistakes. They were getting overconfident. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was past midnight. I ignored it, assuming it was another hate message or a notification that I had been kicked out of another family circle. It buzzed again, and again. I picked it up. It was a text message. But it wasn't from a blocked number, and it wasn't from Harper. It was from Monica. Monica was my cousin on my father's side. She was a no-nonsense woman who ran a bakery in the city. We hadn't been close in years, just Christmas cards and occasional likes on Facebook, but she had always been the observant one. I opened the message. "Hey Sid, I know it is late. I just wanted to say, I do not buy it." I stared at the words, holding my breath. 3 dots appeared as she typed more. I saw Harper's post. I saw what Jenna wrote, but I remember who took care of Aunt Elena. I remember who was there every weekend. Harper is spinning a story, and Landon looks like a guy who tries to sell you crypto at a funeral. I just wanted you to know that not everyone is drinking the Kool-Aid. If you need someone to stand up for you, or if you have proof of what really happened, I am here. Just let me know when you are ready to fight back. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for a week. Tears hot and fast streamed down my face, soaking the pillowcase. In the middle of the ocean of hate, a single lighthouse had turned on. I wasn't entirely alone. I typed back, "Thank you, Monica. You have no idea what that means. And yes, I have proof. I have so much proof." I put the phone down and looked at Elliot, who was sleeping beside me. I reached out and took his hand. Harper wanted a war of public opinion. She wanted to shame me into submission. She thought isolating me would break me, but she had forgotten one thing. You can isolate a person, but you cannot isolate the truth. And with Monica on my side, I finally had a way to bring that truth back to the family. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in days, I fell asleep. The voicemail light on my landline was blinking when I walked into the house. It was a red, rhythmic pulse in the dim hallway, like a warning beacon. I rarely use the landline anymore. It was a relic I had kept because the number was listed in all of Mom's medical files. but hearing it ring always made my stomach tighten. It was a Pavlovian response from the last year of her life, when every call meant a new symptom, a new prescription, or a new emergency. I pressed play. "Sydney, this is Caroline Rhodes," the voice said. It was crisp, authoritative, and sounded like oak furniture and old books. Caroline had been my mother's attorney for 30 years. "I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Do not be late. Harper's legal representation has contacted me. They are contesting the will on the grounds of undue influence. We need to talk." The machine clicked off. Undue influence. The phrase hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It was a legal term, cold and sterile, but the accusation behind it was violent. It implied that the thousands of hours I had spent caring for Mom, the nights I slept on the floor next to her bed because she was afraid of the dark, the days I spent spoon-feeding her broth when her hands were too shaky to hold a spoon, were not acts of love. It implied they were a strategy. It twisted my grief into a con. The next morning, I sat in Caroline Rhodes's office. The room smelled of lemon polish and old paper. Caroline was a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair cut into a sharp bob and eyes that missed nothing. She sat behind a desk that looked large enough to land a plane on, her hands folded over a thick file. "They are not just asking for a settlement anymore. Sydney," Caroline said, her voice devoid of the pity I had been getting from everyone else. "Harper has hired a lawyer who specializes in contested estates. They are alleging that because you were the primary caregiver and controlled access to your mother in her final months, you manipulated her mental state to coerce her into changing the will. They are claiming your mother was not of sound mind and that you took advantage of her vulnerability." I felt the heat rise in my face. "That is a lie. Mom was sharp as a tack until the morphine took over in the last week. You know that." "I know that," Caroline said calmly. "And more importantly, the law knows that, but they are counting on the fact that you do not have the stomach for a fight. They think you will settle to make the ugly accusations go away." She opened the file and slid a piece of paper across the desk toward me. "Your mother anticipated this," Caroline said softly. I looked down. It was a photocopy of a handwritten note. The handwriting was my mother's, but it was shaky, the letters jagged and uneven. It was dated 9 months before she died. I picked it up, my hands trembling. "To my executor." The note read, "I am making these changes to my will while I am of sound mind and body. I know my daughter Harper will be angry. She has always believed that what is mine is hers. But I'm leaving the house to Sydney, not just because she cared for me, but because she is the only one who will protect it. Sydney has paid for her sister's mistakes for 20 years. I will not let my legacy become another bailout for Harper's bad decisions or the men she chooses to let ruin her life. This house is my final way of protecting Sydney from Harper and men like Landon Pierce." I read the last line 3 times. Men like Landon Pierce. "She knew," I whispered, a tear hitting the paper. She never said it out loud, but she knew. "Your mother was a very observant woman," Caroline said. "She came to me 9 months ago to update the will specifically because Landon had started asking her questions about the property taxes and the zoning laws. She told me, 'That man is counting my money before I am even dead.'" The memory hit me like a physical blow, pulling me back to a rainy Tuesday afternoon 8 months ago. I was in the living room, kneeling on the carpet. Mom had just had a bad reaction to her chemotherapy. She was weak, humiliated, and in pain. I was trying to convince her to take her anti-nausea medication, crushing the pills into applesauce because she could not swallow them whole. "I am sorry, Sid," she had whispered, her hand resting on my head. Her skin felt like dry paper. "I'm so much trouble." "You are no trouble, Mom," I had said, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. "I am right here." The front door had banged open, letting in a gust of cold wind. Harper breezed in, shaking a wet umbrella onto the hardwood floor I had just polished. She was wearing a new trench coat and holding a Starbucks cup. "Ugh, it smells like medicine in here," Harper had said, wrinkling her nose. She didn't come over to the sofa. She stayed in the entryway, checking her reflection in the hall mirror. "Hey, Mom, I can only stay for 15 minutes. I have a microdermabrasion appointment at 4, and I need to de-stress. Landon and I are fighting about the guest list again. Mom had looked at Harper, her eyes filled with a sadness so deep it looked like exhaustion. It is nice to see you, Harper. You look tired, Harper had said, tapping away on her phone. Sydney, are you making sure she eats? She looks super thin. Anyway, I just needed to grab that vintage purse of yours. Mom, the Chanel one. Landon has a work dinner and I need to look the part. She had grabbed the bag from the coat closet and left 12 minutes later. She never asked how the chemo was going. She never offered to hold the bucket while Mom was sick. She took the bag and left me to clean up the mess. I blinked, bringing myself back to Caroline's office. The anger that had been simmering in my gut for weeks began to cool into something harder, something more useful. It solidified into resolve. They say I isolated her, I said to Caroline. They say I kept Harper away. We can disprove that, Caroline said, flipping a page in her legal pad. We need witnesses, people who saw your mother in those final months, people who can attest to her mental state, and, crucially, to Harper's absence. I have the hospice records, obviously, but we need more. Dr. Moreno, I said immediately. Elias Moreno. He was her oncologist, but he was also her primary care doctor for 20 years. He came to the house for house calls when she got too weak to travel. He talked to her for hours. Good, Caroline said, writing down the name. Doctors make excellent witnesses. Their word carries weight. Who else? I thought about the quiet street where we lived. The houses were set back from the road, separated by hedges and fences. But in a neighborhood like that, privacy was an illusion. People watched. Mrs. Calloway, I said. Next door? She is 80 years old. She spends all day in her garden, and she has eyes like a hawk. She used to bring Mom soup every Tuesday. Go see her, Caroline instructed. Do not coach her. Just ask her what she remembers. If she has anything useful, I will have my paralegal take a formal deposition. I left the law office with a copy of the note tucked safely in my purse. It felt like carrying a weapon. I drove straight to Mrs. Calloway's house. She was, predictably, in her front yard, deadheading her roses with a pair of shears that looked menacing in her arthritic hands. When she saw me, she waved, her face breaking into a wreath of wrinkles. Sydney, dear, she called out. I was just thinking about you. How are you holding up? I have been better, Mrs. Calloway, I admitted, leaning against the white picket fence. I actually wanted to ask you something. It is about Harper. Mrs. Calloway's smile vanished. She snipped a rosehead with a sharp snick. That girl, I saw what she posted on the internet. My granddaughter showed me. Shameful, airing dirty laundry like that. She is suing me, I said. She claims I forced Mom to change the will. She says Mom wasn't in her right mind. Mrs. Calloway let out a noise that was half laugh, half snort. Your mother, not in her right mind. Betty Hernandez was the sharpest woman on this block until the day she closed her eyes. We played Scrabble 2 weeks before she passed. She beat me by 50 points. She played the word quixotic on a triple word score. Would you be willing to tell a lawyer that, I asked. I would tell the Pope that, she declared. She pulled off her gardening gloves. But Sydney, there is something else. I did not want to mention it because I didn't want to upset you. But if she is suing you, you should know. Know what? That boyfriend of hers, she said, lowering her voice conspiratorially. The shiny one. Landon. What about him? I saw him, she said. About 3 weeks before your mother passed. You were at the pharmacy picking up prescriptions. Harper came over, supposedly to visit, but she stayed in the car. She stayed in the car. Yes, she sat there texting, but he got out. He didn't go inside the house, though he walked around the perimeter. He had a clipboard and a camera. He was taking pictures of the roof, the foundation, the backyard. He was measuring the distance from the garage to the property line. My blood ran cold. He was measuring the property. He looked like a real estate agent, Mrs. Calloway said, her eyes narrowing. Or an appraiser. He was writing things down. Lot size, drainage, things like that. I heard him on the phone. He was saying, "The structure is dated, but the land value is prime. We can probably subdivide if we knock the main unit down." I gripped the fence so hard a splinter dug into my palm. He wasn't just planning to sell the house. He was planning to demolish it. He was planning to scrape away my mother's life, the home where we grew up, the garden she planted, and sell the dirt to a developer to pay off his gambling debts. He did this while Mom was inside dying. I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She was in the living room, Mrs. Calloway confirmed. I could see her silhouette in the window. He didn't even go in to say hello. He just cased the joint and left. "Thank you, Mrs. Calloway," I said. "You have no idea how important that is." I went back to my house, not their asset, and found Elliot in the dining room. He had covered the table in paperwork. He was building a timeline. "It is all coming together," Elliot said without looking up. He pointed to a series of sticky notes arranged on the wall. "Look at the dates." I walked over. August 12th. Landon gets a final notice from the Onyx Group regarding his gambling debt. August 15th. Harper asks Mom for a loan of $10,000. Mom refuses. August 20th. Mom visits Caroline Rhodes and updates her will, adding the specific clause about protecting the house from Landon. September 1st. Landon is sued by American Express. October 10th. Calloway sees Landon measuring the property and talking about demolition. November 2nd, Mom passes away. November 15th. The wedding venue deposit is due. November 16th. The lunch where they demand the house. "It is not a crime of passion," Elliot said, standing up and crossing his arms. "It is a crime of desperation. They were banking on the inheritance. They spent money they didn't have because they assumed the house was a guaranteed payout. When the will was read, and they realized Mom had cut them off, the panic set in. That is why they are suing. They are not fighting for fairness. They are fighting for survival." "Mom beat them," I said, looking at the timeline. "She saw it coming before we did. She locked the doors before the robbers even got to the porch." "She did," Elliot agreed. "But now we have to hold the line." I walked over to the front door and opened it. I stepped out onto the porch. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn my mother had watered every evening for 30 years. I looked at the rose bushes she had pruned, the wind chimes she had hung. I thought about Landon walking around this yard, measuring it for a bulldozer, calculating how many poker chips he could trade my childhood home for. I thought about Harper sitting in the car, too selfish to visit her dying mother but willing to wait while her boyfriend appraised the inheritance. I placed my hand on the cool brass of the door handle. It felt solid, permanent. "I hear you. Mom," I whispered into the twilight. "I promise, I will not let them turn this house into a casino chip. I will burn the whole world down before I let him sign a deed to this place." I went back inside and locked the door. I heard the deadbolt slide home with a heavy, satisfying thunk. Let them sue. Let them lie. I had the truth. I had the witnesses. And I had the ghost of Betty Hernandez standing right beside me, ready for war. The phone call came late on Thursday night. It was the kind of time when the only people calling are drunks or bearers of bad news. I was neither drunk nor in the mood for more bad news, so I let it go to voicemail. But when the message icon popped up, I saw the transcription. "Please pick up. Sid, I'm falling apart. I need you." It was Harper. Against every instinct my body had developed over the last few weeks, instincts that screamed at me to block the number and double-lock the doors, I called her back. "Hello." Her voice was a wreck. It sounded thick, wet, and trembling, the voice of a little girl who had scraped her knee on the playground. "Harper," I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. "Are you okay?" "I am so sorry. Sydney," she sobbed. I am so sorry. Everything has gotten out of control. Landon is under so much pressure from his parents, and I took it out on you. I didn't mean those things I said at the restaurant. I miss Mom. I miss you. I felt the hard knot of anger in my chest begin to loosen. It is a dangerous thing. The love you have for a sibling. It is a vulnerability that never really heals over, no matter what she had done. Hearing her cry like that pulled me right back to when we were kids, and I was the one putting band-aids on her cuts. I miss you too, I said softly. Can we meet? She pleaded. Just us. Well, Landon wants to come to apologize too. He feels terrible. He wants to make it right. He made a reservation at the Ironwood Grill. It is quiet. We can talk. Please, Sid, let's just fix this. The Ironwood Grill was a high-end steakhouse. It was also 45 minutes away, across the county line. Okay, I said, ignoring the prickle of suspicion at the base of my neck. Tomorrow night at 7. I hung up and looked at Elliot. He was sitting at the kitchen table, watching me with the intensity of a bomb disposal technician. She wants to meet, I said. To apologize. At the Ironwood? Elliot asked. He didn't look convinced. He pulled his laptop toward him. That is a long drive for an apology. He typed for a moment, his brow furrowing. Then he stopped. Interesting, he muttered. What? I was checking the jurisdiction, Elliot said, turning the screen to face me. We have been worried about recording laws. California is a two-party consent state, meaning we usually need their permission to record a private conversation. But the Ironwood is technically just across the border of the jurisdiction where the local circuit court has ruled that conversations in public restaurants do not carry a reasonable expectation of privacy regarding third-party overhearing. It is a gray area, but it leans heavily toward admissibility. He looked at me. They picked a place far from your hospital, far from our home, and in a legal blind spot. Maybe it is a coincidence, or maybe Landon did his homework. You think it is a trap, I said. I think Landon Pierce is a desperate man with $42,000 of gambling debt, Elliot said. Desperate men do not drive 45 minutes to apologize. They drive 45 minutes to negotiate. He reached into his bag and pulled out a new digital voice recorder. Distinct from my phone. We are going, Elliot said, but we are going prepared. I am going to download a high-fidelity recording app on both our phones. We will have backups. I want you to print out the will. Print out Dr. Moreno's capacity statement. Print out the list of Mrs. Calloway's observations. We put it all in a binder. If this is a peace treaty, we leave the binder in the car. If it is an ambush, we bring it to the table. The next evening, the drive to the Ironwood felt like a funeral procession. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the highway. I clutched my purse, feeling the weight of the documents inside. The restaurant was cavernous. It smelled of aged beef, expensive red wine, and aggressive masculinity. The lighting was dim, the kind of darkness that makes diamonds sparkle and secrets easy to keep. The hostess led us to a circular booth in the back corner. Harper and Landon were already there. Harper stood up immediately. She looked ravishing and exhausted, a tragic heroine in a silk slip dress. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Sydney," she breathed, reaching out to hug me. She smelled of lavender and anxiety. "Thank you for coming." Landon stood up too. He was wearing a suit that looked sharper than the last one, his hair slicked back. He didn't offer a hug. He extended a hand to Elliot. "Elliot," Landon said, "glad you could make it. I appreciate you overseeing Sydney's interests." "I am just here for the steak," Elliot said, his voice flat. He didn't shake Landon's hand. We sat down. The air was thick, heavy with unsaid things. I glanced toward the bar. It was about 30 feet away. 2 men were sitting there. They were wearing dark charcoal suits that looked identical. They weren't drinking. They were nursing club sodas. Their bodies turned slightly toward our table. They didn't look like friends catching up. They looked like sentries. "Who are they?" I whispered to Elliot. "I do not know," Elliot murmured back, keeping his eyes on the menu. "But they have been watching us since we walked in." Harper cleared her throat. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her palm was cold and clammy. "Sid," she started, her voice trembling. I wanted to say I am sorry for the things I posted online. I was hurt. I felt abandoned. You called me a thief. Harper, I said quietly. You tried to get my nursing license suspended. I know, she wept, grabbing a napkin to dab at her eyes. It is just the pressure. You do not understand what it is like with Landon's family. They are so established. They judge everything. If this wedding isn't perfect, they are going to think I am trash. They are going to think Landon made a mistake marrying me. I just wanted to make them proud. I wanted to fit in. She looked at me with wide, pleading eyes. I felt like you didn't care about my happiness, like you were choosing a building over my future. I felt my resolve cracking. This was my little sister. I remembered her crying when she didn't get a date to prom. I remembered holding her when she failed her driving test. I hated seeing her in pain. I do care about you. Harper, I said. I don't want a war. I just want to protect Mom's wishes. We can end the war right now, Landon said. His voice cut through the emotional fog like a scalpel. The remorseful fiancé act dropped instantly. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Elliot, sizing him up. We have a solution, Landon said. A compromise. It protects the house, keeps it in the family, but allows Harper and me to access the liquidity we need to save face with my parents. He reached down into his leather briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. He placed them on the table with a heavy thud. The title page read, The Hernandez Family Revocable Trust Asset Management Agreement. What is this? I asked. It is a trust, Landon explained smoothly. My firm's legal team, Pearson Lowell, drafted it up. It is standard stuff. You transfer the deed of the house into this trust. You, Harper, and I become co-trustees. I opened the document. The text was dense, but certain phrases jumped out at me. Clause 4.2, Trustee Authority. The trustees shall have the power to manage, restructure, lease, encumber, or liquidate real property assets for the benefit of the beneficiaries. Clause 5.1, Residency Rights. Sidney Hernandez shall retain the right of occupancy as a primary tenant for a period not exceeding 24 months, subject to the approval of the majority of trustees. I felt the blood drain from my face. This isn't a compromise, I said, my voice rising. This gives you control. If I sign this, you and Harper are the majority, 2 against 1. You could vote to sell the house out from under me the next day. We wouldn't do that, Harper said quickly, though she wouldn't meet my eyes. It is just for collateral. Sid, we need to show assets to get the loan for the wedding and some other investments. We just need the house on paper. And this clause? I pointed to the paper. Tenant. You are turning me into a tenant in my own home. My mother left that house to me, exclusively. Correction, Landon said, his tone hardening. Your mother left the house to you while under the influence of heavy narcotics and undue pressure. That will is contestable. This trust, this is your lifeboat. Sidney, this is us offering you a way to stay in the house for 2 years rent-free before we transition the asset. Transition the asset, Elliot repeated. You mean sell it to pay off your gambling markers. Landon slammed his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. You do not know what you are talking about, Landon spat. This is a generous offer. If you do not sign this, we contest the will. We drag you through probate court for 3 years. The legal fees alone will force you to sell the house anyway. At least with this, you get to stay there for a while. At that moment, the 2 men from the bar stood up. They walked over to our table with synchronized precision. Is there a problem here, Mr. Pierce? One of them asked. He was tall, broad, and had a face like a closed fist. Just explaining the paperwork to my sister-in-law, Landon said, leaning back in his chair with a smirk. Sidney, meet Mr. Vance and Mr. Klein. They are the attorneys who drafted the trust. They are here to witness the signatures, just a formality to make sure everything is legal and binding. It was an ambush. They had brought lawyers. They had brought the paperwork. They had staged the tears. They thought that by surrounding me with suits and threats in a dim restaurant, I would panic and sign away my birthright. Elliot moved his hand. He picked up his phone from the table, sliding it closer to the breadbasket, positioning the microphone directly toward Landon. The screen was black, but I knew the red waveform was dancing silently in the background. "So let me get this straight," I said, keeping my voice steady, projecting it clearly toward the phone. "You are telling me that if I do not sign this document giving you control of my house, you are going to sue me. We are going to destroy you," Harper whispered. I looked at her. The tears were gone. Her face was hard, pinched with a cruelty I had never seen before. "Landon said you are weak," Harper hissed. "He said you will fold if we push hard enough. If you do not sign this, Sydney, we will sue you. We will bury you in legal fees. You will lose the house. You will lose your savings. And you will lose your family. Mom is dead. You have nobody but us. Do not be stupid." "And you," I said, looking at Landon, "you are threatening legal action to coerce me into signing a trust." "I am telling you the reality of the market," Landon said, checking his watch. "Sign the papers. Sydney, save yourself the embarrassment. You cannot afford a war with us." The two lawyers loomed over the table, offering me a pen. "Ms. Hernandez." "Mr. Vance said, his voice deep and oily. "It is a standard agreement. It really is in your best interest to avoid litigation." I looked at the pen. I looked at the thick stack of paper that would erase my mother's legacy. I looked at my sister, who had sold her soul for a wedding reception and a man who viewed her as a line of credit. I closed the folder. I pushed the papers back across the table toward Landon. "No," I said. "Excuse me." Landon blinked. "I said no," I said, my voice ringing clear and loud in the quiet restaurant. "I feel threatened. I feel coerced. You have brought 2 attorneys to intimidate me. You have threatened to bankrupt me with frivolous litigation if I do not hand over my property. I am stating for the record that I am under duress, and I refuse to sign any document presented at this table." Landon's face turned a shade of purple I had only ever seen in cardiac patients. "You are making a mistake," he snarled. "The only mistake I made was coming here," I said. I stood up. Elliot stood up with me, grabbing his phone. "We are done," Elliot said. "You walk out that door," Harper screamed, forgetting the restaurant, forgetting the image she tried so hard to cultivate. "And I will sue you for everything you have. I will make sure you end up with nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing." Her voice echoed off the mahogany walls. Diners turned to stare. The manager was hurrying over. "I hear you, Harper," I said, looking down at her. And so did everyone else. I turned and walked out. I could feel their eyes burning into my back. I could hear Landon swearing at the lawyers. But as we pushed through the heavy doors into the cool night air, the only thing I felt was the weight of the phone in Elliot's pocket, carrying the recording that would burn their entire scheme to the ground. The intercom at the nurse's station buzzed with a sound that always reminded me of a flatline. I was charting vitals for a patient in bed 4, a teenager with a broken collarbone. When the unit secretary looked up at me, her eyes were wide, holding a mixture of pity and curiosity that made my stomach turn over. "Sydney," she said, lowering her voice. "Dr. Henderson wants to see you, in the conference room, now. Is it a code?" I asked, already capping my pen. "No," she said. "Mrs. Higgins from Human Resources is with him." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. In a hospital, you learn very quickly that a meeting with your direct supervisor and Human Resources is never a casual chat. It is an execution. I walked down the long, sterile hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a sound I usually ignored, but which now sounded like a swarm of angry insects. My rubber-soled shoes squeaked on the linoleum. I ran through a mental checklist of my last 3 shifts. Had I miscalculated a dosage? Had I forgotten to sign a chart? Had I been rude to a family member? I opened the door to the small conference room. It was a windowless box we usually used for grief counseling with families. The irony was not lost on me. Dr. Henderson was sitting at the head of the table. He looked grim. his hands clasped tight in front of him. Mrs. Higgins, a woman I had only spoken to once during my orientation 5 years ago, sat across from him with a thick file folder. "Sit down, Sydney," Dr. Henderson said. His voice was gentle, which terrified me more than if he had been yelling. I sat. My hands were shaking, so I tucked them under my thighs to hide them. "What is going on?" Mrs. Higgins opened the file. She didn't look at me. She looked at the paper. "Ms. Hernandez, on Tuesday morning, the State Board of Nursing received a formal complaint filed against your license. Because of the nature of the allegations, they are required to notify your employer immediately." "A complaint?" I felt the blood drain from my face. "From a patient. It was an anonymous complaint," Mrs. Higgins said, her voice dry and bureaucratic. "The complainant alleges that you have been exhibiting signs of severe chemical dependency and exhaustion. It claims you have been, and I quote, habitually diverting narcotics for personal use, and that you have made critical medication errors that were covered up due to negligence." I sat there, unable to breathe. It felt as if someone had swung a sledgehammer into my chest. Diversion of narcotics. That was the death knell for a nurse. Even the whisper of it could end a career. "That is a lie," I managed to whisper. "I have never touched a pill that wasn't prescribed to me. My counts are perfect. I have never had a discrepancy." "We know," Dr. Henderson said firmly. He leaned forward, ignoring Mrs. Higgins' sharp look. "Sydney, I pulled your Pyxis logs for the last 6 months. Every single milligram of morphine, dilaudid, and fentanyl you pulled is accounted for. There is zero evidence of diversion. Zero." "Then why am I here?" I asked, my voice rising. "Because the complaint also alleges that your personal family crisis has rendered you mentally unstable and dangerous to patients." Mrs. Higgins continued, finally looking at me. Her eyes were cold, assessing. "The complaint states that you have been bringing family drama into the workplace and that you are financially desperate, which makes you a theft risk." Financially desperate, family drama. The room stopped spinning and snapped into a terrifyingly sharp focus. "Harper," I said. The name tasted like ash in my mouth. "We cannot speculate on the identity of the reporter," Mrs. Higgins said. "However, due to the severity of the accusations, specifically the substance abuse, we are required to follow protocol. We have to open an internal investigation." "Am I fired?" I asked. "No," Dr. Henderson said immediately. "Absolutely not. But, Sydney, until the board clears this complaint, and until our internal review is done, we have to place you on administrative duty. No patient contact, no access to the medication dispensers." I looked at Dr. Henderson. He was a good man. I could see the anger in his jawline. He knew this was a hit job. "I have already submitted a letter to the board," Dr. Henderson told me, his voice low and intense. "I wrote it this morning. I vouched for your character, your clinical skills, and your integrity. I told them this complaint appears to be malicious, but the bureaucracy is a machine. Sydney, we have to let the gears turn." I walked out of that room 20 minutes later, stripped of my badge access to the med room. I felt naked. I felt marked. I walked past the trauma bay where I had saved a heart attack victim just 2 days ago, and I realized that my sister wasn't just trying to take my house. She was trying to take my identity. She knew that being a nurse wasn't just what I did. It was who I was, and she was trying to burn it down. I drove home in a daze. When I walked through the front door, Elliot was on a conference call. He took one look at my face, hung up on his client without a word, and walked over to me. I collapsed into his arms and told him everything. Elliot didn't offer platitudes. He went straight to the dining room table, which had become our war room. He opened his laptop and started typing. "What time was the complaint filed?" he asked. "Tuesday morning," I said, wiping my eyes. "Around 10 o'clock. Elliot stopped typing. He turned to look at me, his expression darkening. "Tuesday morning," he repeated. "Sydney, think about the timeline." I tried to push through the fog in my brain. "Tuesday morning." Tuesday was the day before they called to ask for the meeting at the steakhouse, I said. Exactly, Elliot said. The complaint was filed 24 hours before Harper called you crying, begging for a truce. It was filed before we sat down at the Ironwood Grill. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. They filed the complaint to break me. I realized. They set the fire, and then they invited me to dinner to sell me the fire extinguisher. The trust document? They thought that if they threatened my license, I would be so terrified, so desperate for the lawsuit to go away, that I would sign anything. It was a pincer movement, Elliot said, his voice cold. One arm attacks your assets, the other attacks your income. If you lose your job, you cannot pay the legal fees to fight them. You would have to settle. They are monsters, I whispered. They are tactical, Elliot corrected, but they made a mistake. They assumed you would be served with the notice immediately. Bureaucracy is slow. You didn't find out until today. At the dinner, they were probably wondering why you weren't more panicked. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Val, one of the other senior nurses on my shift. We had worked together for 8 years. She was the kind of friend who would help you bury a body. No questions asked. Sid, are you okay? I heard you got pulled into the office. I didn't want to show you this at work, but I think you need to see it. Attached was a screenshot of a Facebook Messenger conversation. The sender was Harper Hernandez. The message read, Hi Val, I know we haven't met, but I am Sydney's sister. I am really worried about her. She's been acting so erratic since Mom died. I think she might be self-medicating to deal with the grief. I know she has access to things at the hospital. Please, as her friend, just keep an eye on her. I am terrified she's going to make a mistake that hurts someone. I just want her to be safe. I stared at the screen until the pixels blurred. It was perfect. It was evil. It was framed as the concern of a loving sister. But every word was a calculated seed of doubt. Self-medicating, access to things, erratic. She was planting the narrative directly with my colleagues. She messaged Val, I said, showing the phone to Elliot. She probably messaged others too. Elliot looked at the screenshot. She is trying to isolate you. She wants your support system to doubt you. I need a lawyer, I said. Not a family lawyer, not Caroline. I need someone who knows how to fight dirty. I have a name, Elliot said. Michael Trent. He is a litigator. He usually defends medical professionals against malpractice, but he handles defamation too. He is expensive, but he is a shark. Call him, I said. I do not care what it costs. We met Michael Trent the next afternoon. His office was in the city, a glass and steel fortress that looked down on the bay. Michael was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite. He wore a suit that cost more than my car. And he didn't smile once. He listened to the recording of the steakhouse dinner. He read the copy of the anonymous complaint. He looked at the screenshots from Val. He leaned back in his chair and tented his fingers. This is not a legal dispute, Michael said. His voice was deep and smooth. This is a demolition job. Can we stop them? I asked. We can do more than stop them. Michael said, we can bury them, but you need to understand what their goal is. They do not just want the $75,000 anymore. That ship has sailed. Now, they need to destroy your credibility. If you are discredited, if you are a drug-addled, unstable nurse, then your testimony about your mother's mental state becomes worthless. If you are fired for cause, you cannot afford to fight the will contest. He looked me dead in the eye. They want to squeeze you until you cannot breathe. They want you to beg them to let you sign that trust. I shivered. So what do? We document every breath they take, Michael said. You are going to start a log, a black book, every text, every call, every social media post. Every time a friend tells you Harper reached out, we build a timeline of harassment. We prove malice. Malice is the key to piercing their defense. He tapped the paper with the screenshot from Val. This is gold. This proves she was actively spreading rumors to your professional network. That is tortious interference with employment. That is a lawsuit we can win. I went home and bought a thick black notebook. I sat at the kitchen table and started writing. November 18th. 10:00 a.m. Anonymous complaint filed with board. November 19, 7:00 p.m. Dinner at Ironwood. Coercion attempt. November 20th, 2:00 p.m. Val receives message from Harper alleging substance abuse. November 22, 9:00 a.m. Meeting with HR. Page after page. I printed out emails. I saved voicemails. I felt like a detective investigating the murder of my own life. It was exhausting, but it gave me something to do other than cry. 3 days later, I was sitting in my living room, staring at the wall, wondering if I would ever be allowed to touch a patient again. When my email pinged, it was a notification from the State Board of Nursing. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened it, my hand shaking so hard I almost dropped the mouse. Subject case 4492B. Investigation status update. Dear Ms. Hernandez, the board has conducted a preliminary review of the complaint filed against your license on November 18th. We have reviewed the pharmacy logs provided by Silverbridge General Hospital, as well as the sworn statements from Dr. Henderson and 3 senior nursing staff members. At this time, the board finds no evidence to support the allegations of substance diversion or negligence. Furthermore, the timing and nature of the complaint, lacking any specific corroborating evidence, suggest a personal grievance rather than a patient safety concern. The investigation is hereby closed. No disciplinary action will be taken. Your license remains in good standing. I let out a scream that was half sob, half laugh. I read it again. Closed. No evidence. Good standing. Harper had taken her shot. She had aimed for the center of my chest, but she had missed, and in missing, she had done something fatal to her own cause. Elliot, I yelled, running into the kitchen. Look at this. Elliot read the email. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. She overplayed her hand, Elliot said. She tried to weaponize the state bureaucracy, but the state bureaucracy relies on facts, and the facts are that you are a damn good nurse. It says right here, I pointed to the screen. Suggests a personal grievance. The board sees it. They put it in writing. This goes in the black book, Elliot said. And it goes to Michael Trent. This email is proof that she filed a false report to a government agency. That is not just harassment. Sydney, that is bordering on criminal. I looked at the email again. I felt a surge of strength return to my body. They had tried to take my job. They had failed. And now, I had an official government document stating that my accusers were likely acting out of a personal vendetta. I picked up the black notebook. I opened it to a fresh page. I wrote down the date and the time, and then, for the first time in weeks, I wrote down a plan of my own. They wanted to see if I would break. Now, they are going to see what happens when I fight back. The break room at Silverbridge General Hospital always smelled of 3 things: burnt coffee, antiseptic wipes, and exhaustion. It was 10 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday, and I was 4 hours into a 12-hour shift that had already seen 2 car accidents and a suspected meningitis case. I was sitting at the wobbly round table, peeling a mandarin orange, trying to find a moment of peace before the chaos of the floor pulled me back in. The door opened. I expected another nurse, or maybe an orderly looking for the vending machine. Instead, a man I did not know walked in. He was wearing a windbreaker and holding a large manila envelope. He looked out of place among the scrubs and stethoscopes, his eyes scanning the room with a bored, bureaucratic efficiency. "Sydney Hernandez?" he asked. I froze. A segment of orange halfway to my mouth. Yes. He walked over to the table and dropped the envelope in front of me. It landed with a heavy, flat thud that seemed to silence the hum of the refrigerator. "You have been served," he said. He didn't smile. He didn't apologize. He just turned around and walked out, checking a name off a clipboard as he went. My hands were trembling as I wiped the citrus juice onto my scrub pants. I reached for the envelope. It was thick, heavy. It felt like holding a brick. I tore open the top and slid out the stack of papers. The text at the top of the first page was bold and centered. Superior Court of California County of Marin Plaintiff Harper E. Hernandez Defendant Sidney M. Hernandez. It was official. It was real. My sister had sued me. I sat there, numb, reading the legal jargon that reduced our entire shared history to a case number CV24991. I flipped to the section titled Prayer for Relief. This was the list of demands. This was what Harper wanted. First, she demanded a partition by sale. She was asking the court to force the sale of the family home, with the proceeds divided equally between siblings, citing common law rights of inheritance that allegedly superseded the will. Second, she demanded compensatory damages in the amount of $50,000 for intentional infliction of emotional distress and defamation of character, claiming I had maliciously spread lies about her fiancé, Landon Pierce, which had caused him reputational harm and loss of business opportunity. Third, she requested a permanent injunction, a gag order. She wanted a judge to legally forbid me from speaking about Landon's finances, the wedding, or the estate to anyone outside of legal counsel, but it was the statement of facts section that made me run to the trash can and retch. It was a work of fiction, a twisted, dark fantasy where I was the villain. Paragraph 4. The defendant, Sidney Hernandez, systematically isolated the decedent, Betty Hernandez, from the plaintiff and other family members during the final 6 months of her life. Paragraph 5. The defendant utilized her medical training and control over the decedent's medication regimen to induce a state of compliance and dependency. Paragraph 6. While the decedent was in a state of chemically induced confusion, the defendant coerced her into altering her last will and testament to disinherit the plaintiff. I stood there, gripping the edge of the counter, gasping for air. They were accusing me of drugging my mother. They were accusing me of abusing a dying woman, my own mother, to steal a house. I remembered the nights I spent holding Mom's hand while she cried from the bone pain. I remembered how I had to beg Harper to come visit, and how she always had an excuse: Pilates, brunch, a headache. And now, she had signed a sworn statement claiming I had locked her out. I put the papers back in the envelope. I couldn't look at them anymore. I felt dirty just holding them. I left work early. I claimed a migraine, which wasn't entirely a lie. My head felt like it was being crushed in a vice. I drove straight to Michael Trent's office. Michael met me in the conference room. He looked at the papers, his face unreadable. He flipped through the pages quickly, his eyes scanning the legal boilerplate. "This is standard," he said, tossing the heavy stack onto the mahogany table. "Standard," I choked out. "Michael, they are accusing me of elder abuse. They are accusing me of drugging my mother. They are throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks," Michael said calmly. "This is a tactic. Sidney, it is called a shotgun pleading. They allege everything under the sun: fraud, undue influence, emotional distress, hoping that the sheer weight of the accusations will terrify you. They want you to look at this. Imagine the legal fees of defending against it, and cut a check." "It makes me sick," I said. "It is designed to make you sick," Michael replied. "Look at the defamation claim. They are asking for $50,000 because you slandered Landon. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. If we prove that Landon is a gambler and a fraud, there is no defamation. They know that, but they are banking on you being too scared to go to discovery." Elliot, who had met me there, turned his laptop screen toward us. "They are already trying to win the court of public opinion," Elliot said grimly. He showed us a post from Landon's Facebook page, posted 2 hours ago. It was a picture of Landon and Harper standing in front of a courthouse, looking solemn and determined. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to stand up for what is right, even when it is family. We are putting our faith in the justice system to correct a wrong. Our family lawyers are handling it. Justice is coming. At the Sith family. Legacy." "He is bragging," I said. "He thinks he has already won. He thinks he has intimidated you." Michael corrected. "He is puffing his chest out." My phone rang. It was sitting on the table between us. The screen lit up with an unknown number. I stared at it. Answer it, Michael said. Put it on speaker. I tapped the green icon. Hello. Is this Sydney Hernandez? The voice was male, deep, and commanded authority. It sounded like money. It sounded like old leather and expensive scotch. This is she, I said. This is Franklin Pierce, the voice said. Landon's father. I felt a jolt of adrenaline. I had never met Franklin Pierce. I knew he was a wealthy real estate developer, a man whose name was on half the strip malls in the county. Landon talked about him constantly, usually to imply that he had access to the family vault. Mr. Pierce, I said, looking at Michael. Michael signaled for me to keep talking. To what do I owe the pleasure? Let us cut the pleasantries, Franklin said. His tone was freezing. I have just reviewed the filing my son and your sister submitted. It is a mess, a public, embarrassing mess. I agree, I said. It is a lie. I do not care about the details of who said what to whom. Franklin interrupted. Here is the reality. Ms. Hernandez, my family does not lose in court. We do not get dragged through the mud by nurses with a grudge. My son tells me, you are holding his fiancé's inheritance hostage because you disapprove of their marriage. That is not what is happening, I said firmly. Harper is trying to force me to sell my home to pay for Landon's debts. Landon does not have debts, Franklin snapped. Landon manages a portfolio. If he has cash flow issues, it is because his assets are tied up in long-term positions. You wouldn't understand high-level finance. I looked at Elliot. He rolled his eyes so hard it looked painful. Listen to me closely, Franklin continued. I am prepared to fund this litigation for as long as it takes. I have attorneys on retainer who need the exercise. We will drag this out for 3 years. We will depose you for days. We will subpoena every record you have ever created. By the time we are done, that house you are clinging to will be gone just to pay your legal bills, or you can do the smart thing. And what is the smart thing? I asked, my voice shaking with rage. Sign the settlement, Franklin said. Give Harper her share, let them have their wedding, and walk away with your dignity intact. If you force me to get involved, Sydney, I will bankrupt you. Consider this a courtesy call. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. He threatened me, I whispered. He is going to bankroll them. He is bluffing, Elliot said. Or rather, he is operating on bad intelligence. What do you mean? He said Landon has no debts, Elliot pointed out. He said Landon's assets are just tied up. He doesn't know. Sydney, he doesn't know about the gambling. He doesn't know about the evictions. He doesn't know about the fraud lawsuits. Landon is lying to his own father, I realized. He is using his dad as a scary dog to bark at me, but he hasn't told the dog that the house is already on fire. Michael Trent stood up. He walked over to the window and looked out at the city skyline. He looked like a general surveying a battlefield. This changes things, Michael said. If Franklin Pierce is funding this, they have infinite resources. We cannot win a war of attrition. We cannot let this drag on for 3 years. So I have to settle, I asked, feeling the tears prick my eyes. I have to let them win. No, Michael said, turning around. His face was hard. It means we stop playing defense. We go on the offense. We launch the nuclear option. What is the nuclear option? We file a counterclaim, Michael said, walking back to the table. We countersue for abuse of process and civil harassment, and with that filing, we submit our initial evidence list. He pointed to Elliot's laptop. We file the recording from the steakhouse. Michael said, we file the transcripts where they explicitly threaten to sue you if you do not sign the trust. We file the evidence of Landon's gambling debts to establish motive for the lawsuit, and we send a copy of that filing directly to the senior partner at Pierce & Lowell, and a courtesy copy to Mr. Franklin Pierce. You want to show the dad the truth, I said. I want to blow their narrative out of the water, Michael said. Franklin Pierce thinks he is fighting a jealous sister-in-law. Let's see how eager he is to fund a lawsuit when he finds out his son is trying to commit fraud to pay off a casino. And the gag order they requested? Elliot asked. We argue that it is moot because the information is relevant to the defense. Michael said. They opened the door by suing for defamation. Now, we are allowed to prove that the defamatory statements that Landon is a broke gambler are actually true. They walked right into a trap. Do it, I said. Sydney, Michael warned, his voice softening slightly. Once we file this, there is no going back. The recording will be public record. The gambling debts will be public record. You will be exposing your sister's fiancé as a con artist to the entire world. It will destroy any relationship you have left with her. I thought about the text messages Harper sent to Val. I thought about the anonymous complaint to the nursing board. I thought about the statement of facts that accused me of abusing my mother. The relationship was already dead. They had killed it. I was just refusing to lie next to the corpse. File it, I said. I want them to see that I am not the one who is afraid. That night, the house was quiet. The silence felt different than it had before. Before, it was the silence of grief. Now, it was the silence of waiting for a bomb to go off. I sat at the kitchen table with the summons in front of me. Harper Hernandez versus Sydney Hernandez. Elliot walked in and placed a cup of tea next to my hand. He wrapped his arms around my shoulders, resting his chin on the top of my head. Are you okay? He asked. I traced the letters of my name on the legal document. I always thought that if I just loved her enough, she would grow up, I said quietly. I thought if I gave her enough money, or enough chances, she would eventually become the sister I wanted her to be. But Mom knew better. Mom knew that some people are just empty, and they will drain you until you are empty too. You are doing the right thing, Elliot said. Protecting yourself isn't selfish. I know, I said. But it hurts. It hurts to know that she hates me enough to sign this paper. She hates me enough to lie about Mom. I picked up the summons and moved it to the side. Underneath it was the picture of Mom and me that I kept on the table. Her smile was warm, her eyes knowing. Franklin Pierce said he would bankrupt me, I whispered. He said he would drag me through court until I had nothing. He won't, Elliot said, because we have the truth. I looked up at Elliot. If I lose, I said, my voice steady and clear in the quiet kitchen. If they somehow win, and I lose this house, and I lose my savings, at least I will lose while telling the truth. I will not sign a lie to save myself. I will not let them rewrite history. Elliot kissed the top of my head. We are not going to lose. I looked out the window at the dark outline of Mrs. Calloway's house next door. I thought about the recording sitting in Michael's safe. I thought about the look on Franklin Pierce's face when he heard his son threaten to destroy me. No, I said. We are not. I turned off the light. The summons lay on the table in the dark. A declaration of war that was about to be answered, despite the lawsuit, despite the gambling debts, and despite the fact that they were actively trying to evict me from my own home. Harper and Landon decided to throw a party, and not just a party, it was an engagement gala held at the Golden Valley Country Club, a venue so exclusive that the membership fees alone cost more than my annual nursing salary. They had put down a non-refundable deposit months ago, likely using one of the credit cards Elliot had found in the default pile. They couldn't cancel it without admitting defeat. And Landon Pierce was a man who would rather drown in a tuxedo than swim in a life vest. I was not invited, obviously, but Monica was. She sent me a picture of the invitation 2 days before the event. It was heavy cream cardstock with gold foil lettering. The future Mr. and Mrs. Pierce invite you to celebrate love, resilience, and family. Underneath the photo, Monica had texted, "They are planning a speech," my mom told me. "Landon is going to make a toast about overcoming toxic family obstacles. They are going to paint you as the villain in front of 200 people, including Landon's entire extended family. My lawyer, Michael, advised me to stay home. He said it was a provocation. He said I should let them dig their own grave. But Elliot shook his head. He was standing by the window, looking at the lawsuit paperwork that accused me of elder abuse. "They are not digging a grave, Michael," Elliot said. "They are building a monument to a lie. If they tell that story in a room full of wealthy, influential people, and Sydney is not there to dispute it, that story becomes the truth. We do not need to make a scene. We just need the truth to be in the room." We did our research. The Golden Valley Country Club was private, yes, but the Oaks Bar attached to the main ballroom was open to the public on Thursday nights to encourage potential members to visit. As long as we bought a drink, we were not trespassing. We were patrons. On the night of the party, I dressed like I was going to a funeral for someone I used to love. I wore a sharp black dress and heels that clicked with authority on the pavement. Elliot wore his best suit. We looked like a power couple, not the desperate defendants in a civil suit. The club was staggering. It sat on top of a hill overlooking the vineyards, the architecture a blend of Spanish mission and modern arrogance. We walked past the valet stand, ignoring the line of Bentleys and Porsches, and headed straight for the side entrance that led to the bar. The bar was situated on a mezzanine level. It had a balcony with a wrought iron railing that looked directly down into the grand ballroom. I walked to the edge of the railing and looked down. It was breathtakingly expensive. The room was a sea of white orchids and hydrangeas. There were crystal chandeliers the size of small cars. A string quartet was playing softly in the corner. Waiters in white gloves moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. And there they were. Harper was wearing a white sequined gown that shimmered under the lights. She looked beautiful. But from this distance, I could see the tension in her shoulders. She was gripping her champagne flute like a lifeline. Landon stood next to her, radiating a frantic kind of energy. He was shaking hands, laughing too loudly, clapping men on the back. Off to the side, standing like a separate tribe, was the Pierce family. The men wore dark suits and expressions of mild boredom. The women wore jewelry that caught the light with heavy, expensive glints. In the center was Franklin Pierce, Landon's father. He wasn't smiling. He was scanning the room, assessing the investment. "Look at them," Elliot whispered, standing beside me at the railing. "They are performing." "It cost $75,000 to stage this play," I said, feeling a wave of nausea. "And they want me to pay for the ticket." We ordered 2 club sodas from the bartender. The bar was mostly empty, as everyone was down in the ballroom. The audio from the party drifted up to us clearly, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversation. Elliot walked over to a shadowed corner near the service station. He had spotted something earlier when we looked up the venue's floor plan online. The AV closet for the mezzanine was connected to the main system. The door was slightly ajar, likely left by a tech who had gone down to the main floor. A young waiter walked by, carrying a tray of dirty glasses. He looked tired. "Excuse me," Elliot said, flashing a $20 bill. "The sound from downstairs is a little muffled up here. Is there a way to patch in so we can hear the speeches? My wife really wants to hear her sister." The waiter shrugged, took the 20, and pointed to a panel on the wall behind a fake ficus tree. "There is an aux input there. It feeds into the zone speakers. But if the main board is open, it overrides. Just do not blow the speakers." Elliot nodded. He waited for the waiter to leave, then pulled a cable from his jacket pocket. He plugged his phone into the wall. "Are we really doing this?" I asked, my heart racing. "Only if they lie," Elliot said. He opened the audio file on his phone. "Steakhouse full recording, MP3. We are the defense. Sydney, we only fire if they shoot first." Below us, the music faded. The room went quiet. A spotlight hit the center of the floor. Landon stepped into the light, holding a microphone. He looked up at the ceiling for a moment, composing himself, unaware that his nemesis was standing 20 feet above him. "Thank you all for coming," Landon said. His voice was smooth, projected through the massive speakers. "Tonight is about love, but it is also about resilience." Harper stepped up beside him, looking down at her feet. "We have had a hard year," Landon continued, his voice taking on a somber, theatrical tone. "As many of you know, Harper lost her mother recently. It was a tragedy, but the greater tragedy was what happened after. I gripped the iron railing. Here it comes. We expected family to pull together, Landon said, shaking his head. But unfortunately, grief does terrible things to people. We have had to deal with jealousy. We have had to deal with greed. Harper's own sister, a woman she looked up to, has tried to take everything from her. A murmur of sympathy went through the crowd. I saw Aunt Melinda nodding vigorously in the front row. She has frozen our assets, Landon lied. She has spread vicious rumors about my business to try and sabotage our future. She has tried to evict Harper from her childhood home because she cannot stand to see us happy. Harper wiped a tear from her eye. It was a perfect performance. But, Landon said, raising his voice, swelling with fake nobility, we have chosen to take the high road. We have chosen to forgive those who hurt us, even if they drag us to court, even if they try to ruin this night. We stand here united, because love is stronger than a bitter sister's envy. He raised his glass. To family, and to fighting for what is yours. Do it, I whispered. Elliot pressed the button. The sound of the applause was suddenly cut off by a sharp crackle of static over the speakers. Then, a voice boomed through the ballroom. It was not Landon's stage voice. It was Landon's real voice, sneering, aggressive, and crystal clear. If you do not sign this, we will sue you. We will bury you in legal fees. You will lose the house. You will lose your savings. And you will lose your family. The room went instantly, terrifyingly silent. 200 people froze. Landon looked around wildly, the microphone in his hand useless. Then, Harper's voice filled the room, sobbing and shrill. Landon said you are weak. He said you will fold if we push hard enough. Mom is dead. You have nobody but us. Do not be stupid. Down below, heads began to turn. People were looking at the speakers, then at the couple on stage. Landon was tapping his microphone, trying to signal the sound booth, but the audio was coming from the override upstairs. The recording continued. It was the part I had dreaded hearing again, but now it sounded like justice. This isn't a compromise. This gives you control. If I sign this, you and Harper are the majority, 2 against 1. You could vote to sell the house out from under me. Then Landon's voice again, arrogant and dismissive. Correction. Your mother left the house to you while under the influence. This trust is your lifeboat. Sydney. Sign the papers. You cannot afford a war with us. And finally, the nail in the coffin. Harper's voice, desperate and revealing the entire scheme. Landon says if we do not get the $75,000 from the house, his parents are going to find out about the debt. He needs the wedding to look perfect, so they will invest in his new fund. It is the only way out. Sydney. You have to sell the house. Elliot pulled the cord. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. It wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum. The illusion of the successful investor and the grieving daughter had been shattered in 60 seconds of high-fidelity audio. Every eye in the room turned to the stage. Harper was standing there, her face pale as the orchids behind her. Landon looked like he was having a stroke. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Then, movement. Franklin Pierce Sr. pushed his way through the crowd. He didn't look like a dignified investor anymore. He looked like a furious father who had just realized he was the mark. He walked right up to the stage. He didn't use the stairs. He grabbed the edge of the platform and hauled himself up, ignoring his age. He snatched the microphone from Landon's hand. For a second, I thought he was going to hit him. You lied to me, Franklin said. The microphone was still live, but he didn't seem to care. His voice wasn't booming. It was a low, dangerous growl that carried to the back of the room. You told me she was stealing from you. You told me you were solvent. Dad, wait, it is a recording. It is edited, Landon stammered, backing away. Shut up, Franklin roared. The sound made the guests jump. I heard your voice, Landon. I heard you threatening a woman. I heard you talking about using my money to cover your debts. Franklin turned to look at Harper. She shrank back, clutching her dress. "And you?" Franklin said, pointing a finger at her. "You went along with it. You sued your own sister to cover up his gambling. Is that what this is? Is that what I'm paying for?" "Mr. Pierce, please," Harper wept, reaching out. "We just wanted a nice wedding." "The wedding is over," Franklin announced. He turned to the crowd. "Everyone go home. The bar is closed. I am not paying for another drop of champagne in this room." He threw the microphone onto the floor. It landed with a deafening screech of feedback. Pandemonium broke out. It wasn't a riot. It was the social equivalent of a riot. Phones were out everywhere. I saw people recording, live streaming, texting. The veneer of polite society had cracked, and everyone was hungry for the wreckage. Landon was trying to grab his father's arm, but Franklin shoved him away so hard, Landon stumbled into a flower arrangement. The vase crashed to the floor, water and glass spilling over the white stage. Harper was standing alone in the middle of the chaos, looking around for someone to save her. She looked up toward the balcony. For a second, our eyes met across the distance. She looked small. She didn't look like the girl who had demanded $75,000. She looked like a child who had played with matches and burned the house down. I felt a pang of sadness, sharp and deep, but I didn't look away. "Let's go," Elliot said gently, touching my elbow. "We have done what we came to do." We turned and walked out of the bar. We walked past the confused valet, past the line of luxury cars, and out into the cool night air. Behind us, the sound of shouting and the crash of a ruined party faded into the distance. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of pine and rain. It tasted clean. "They are going to blame me," I said. "Let them," Elliot replied, opening the car door for me. The truth does not care who it offends, and tonight, the truth was the loudest thing in the room. I got into the car. I didn't look back at the Golden Valley Country Club. I looked forward, toward the road that led back to my mother's house. The war wasn't over, but the enemy had just lost their army. The video of the engagement party disaster did not stay contained within the walls of the Golden Valley Country Club. In the age of the internet, a scandal involving a wealthy family, a ruined wedding, and a dramatic public exposure of fraud has a velocity all its own. By Monday morning, the clip of Franklin Pierce snatching the microphone from his son had circulated through the local social circles. By Tuesday, it had landed on the desk of a financial columnist for the Bay Area Business Journal. The headline was not sensational, but it was devastating. Local investment guru accused of family fraud in viral country club meltdown. The article didn't name me, but it named Landon. It mentioned the lawsuits. It mentioned the gambling allegations. It was the kind of bad press that turns a cash flow problem into a career funeral. But while the internet was having its fun, the real war was happening in the quiet. Carpeted offices of law firms. The first domino to fall was Pierce and Lowell, the firm that had drafted the predatory trust document and sent the two intimidating lawyers to the steakhouse. They were a prestigious firm. They billed $500 an hour. They did not like being featured in audio recordings where their associates were heard coercing a woman to sign away her property under threat of litigation. On Wednesday, Michael Trent called me. "You are going to like this," Michael said, his voice rich with satisfaction. "We just received a notice of withdrawal from Pierce and Lowell. They are dropping Harper and Landon as clients, effective immediately. Can they do that?" I asked, in the middle of a lawsuit. "They can when they realize their clients lied to them and implicated them in a potential ethics violation." Michael explained, "They are cutting the cord to save the ship." They cited irreconcilable breakdown of attorney-client relationship. In lawyer speak, that means, "We are not going down with you." "Good," I said. "But we are not done with them." "No," Michael agreed. "We are not." That afternoon, I went to Michael's office to sign a formal complaint to the State Bar of California. We were filing against Mr. Santz and Mr. Klein, the two suits from the steakhouse. We attached the audio recording. We attached the transcript. We attached the affidavits from the restaurant staff confirming the men had arrived with Landon. It wasn't about pettiness. It was about accountability. They had tried to use their law licenses as a weapon to bully me. Now, I was using the oversight system to disarm them. It was a cold, administrative process. There was no screaming, no tears, just forms, signatures, and the heavy thud of a stamp. It felt incredibly satisfying, but the biggest blow came from inside my own house. Elliot had called in a favor from an old colleague, a digital forensics expert named Sophie. Sophie was a woman who spoke in binary and looked at a hard drive the way a surgeon looks at a patient. She came to the house to create a forensic image of my phone and laptop. We needed to preserve the chain of custody for every text and email I had ever exchanged with Harper, ensuring they couldn't claim I had altered anything. Sophie was setting up her equipment on my dining room table, a maze of cables and right-blocking drives, when she pointed to an old iPad sitting on the kitchen counter. It was Mom's old tablet. I used it mostly for recipes now. "Is that device part of the ecosystem?" Sophie asked. "It was my mom's," I said, but Harper used to use it when she came over to visit. She liked the bigger screen for her Pinterest boards. Sophie's eyes lit up. "Is it still logged in?" I unlocked it. But it wasn't just logged into Mom's old account. Harper, in her carelessness, had logged into her own iCloud account on the device months ago to sync some wedding photos to show Mom, and she had never logged out, because the device was on my Wi-Fi, and because Harper had enabled Messages in iCloud to sync across all her devices. The iPad had been quietly downloading her message history in the background every time she sent a text from her phone. Sophie plugged the iPad into her forensic tower. "I can recover the deleted threads," she said calmly. "If it synced to this local cache before she wiped it from her phone, it is still here in the unallocated space." 2 hours later, we had it. We had the conversation Harper had with Landon the night before the anonymous complaint was filed against my nursing license. I sat there, reading the transcript on Sophie's monitor, feeling a cold sickness spread through my gut. Landon, Tuesday, 9:42 p.m. "She is not breaking. Babe, we need to up the pressure. The lawsuit isn't scaring her fast enough." Harper, Tuesday, 9:45 p.m. "I know. I hate her. She is being so stubborn. What if we hit her job if she's worried about money? She will sign." Landon, Tuesday, 9:46 p.m. "Do not do it yourself. Use a burner email. Say you are a concerned family member. Mention drugs. The board has to investigate if you say drugs." Harper, Tuesday, 9:50 p.m. "I will message Val too. I will play the worried sister card. Val is a gossip. She will spread it." Landon, Tuesday, 9:55 p.m. "Good. And we need to fake some texts from her. Make a chat where she says she is going to ruin the wedding. We can show it to my dad if he asks why we are suing." Harper, Tuesday, 10:01 p.m. "I will just cry to Dad. I will tell him Mom would have wanted me to have the house. Mom is the ultimate weapon. Sydney cannot fight a ghost." I read the line again. "Mom is the ultimate weapon." "She plotted it," I whispered. "It wasn't an impulsive act of anger. It was a strategy. She sat there and planned to destroy my career." "This is the smoking gun," Elliot said, his hand resting on my shoulder. "This proves malice. This proves conspiracy. And it proves that the lawsuit is based on fraudulent evidence. It also proves she committed perjury when she signed that affidavit claiming I was unstable," Michael added, looking at the screen with a predator's focus. "We are submitting this to the court immediately. This isn't just a defense anymore. Sydney, this is the end of her credibility forever." While we were weaponizing Harper's digital footprint, the other side was collapsing. 2 days later, a courier arrived at Michael's office with a package from an unexpected source. The private legal counsel of Franklin Pierce Sr. Franklin was cutting his losses. He realized that funding a lawsuit based on fraud exposed him to liability. If it came out that he knew about the gambling and funded the litigation anyway, he could be sued for malicious prosecution. So, he was flipping on his son. The package contained a single printed email chain. It was an email Landon had sent to his father 3 weeks ago, Attached to a request for a bridge loan. Subject estate update. Liquidity. From Landon Pierce to Franklin Pierce. Dad, the situation with Harper's sister is almost resolved. I have nearly convinced her to sign the settlement. She knows she has no claim to the house, but she is holding out for a cash payout. I just need to apply a little legal pressure to get her to close. The assets are secure. Once she signs, we will have full equity to clear the business overhead I mentioned. Do not worry about the wedding costs. I have it under control. It was a confession. He had lied to his father about my claim to the house. He had lied about the business overhead, which we knew was actually gambling debt, and he had admitted that the lawsuit was just legal pressure to force a sale. He played everyone, Michael said, holding the email. He played you. He played Harper. He played his own father. And now, his father is handing us the knife to cut him loose. Michael drafted a new motion. It was a motion to dismiss Harper's lawsuit, based on unclean hands and fraud, supported by the forensic text messages and Franklin Pierce's email. He also updated our counterclaim to include a count of civil conspiracy. The narrative Harper had built the story of the poor. Victimized little sister fighting the greedy, mean nurse was being dismantled, brick by brick. With her own words, Harper must have sensed the walls closing in. That afternoon, Sophie's system flagged a new email Harper had sent from her phone. Since the iPad was still syncing, we saw it pop up in real time. She was emailing a new lawyer, a strip mall attorney with a 2-star rating on Yelp. She was desperate. Subject: urgent help needed from Harper Hernandez. I need someone to take my case. My previous lawyers quit because of a misunderstanding. My sister is trying to ruin me with fake recordings. I need you to file an emergency injunction to stop her from releasing more info. We need to move fast. Please, I have money coming. I just need to get access to the trust first. She is still lying, I said, shaking my head as I read the email. She is still trying to find a way to get the trust signed. She doesn't get it. It is over. Panic makes people stupid, Elliot said. She is doubling down because she has no other move. But look at what she wrote. I have money coming. She is promising fees she cannot pay based on an asset she doesn't own. She is trying to defraud a new lawyer before she has even hired him. We let her hire him, Michael said. And then we serve him with the texts where she admits to fabricating evidence. Let's see how long he stays. The final piece of the puzzle arrived on Friday. I walked out to the mailbox. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of the ocean. I pulled out a single white envelope with the state seal in the corner, California Board of Registered Nursing. I took a deep breath and tore it open right there on the driveway. Dear Ms. Hernandez, regarding complaint case 4492B. After a thorough investigation, including a review of pharmacy records, employment history, and character references, the board has determined that the allegations against you are unfounded. We found no evidence of substance abuse, diversion, or professional negligence. Furthermore, based on the evidence provided regarding the source of the complaint, we have flagged this report as potentially vexatious. No disciplinary action will be taken, and this inquiry will not appear on your public record. We consider this matter closed. I lowered the letter. I looked up at the house, my house. The afternoon sun was hitting the front window, the one where Mom used to sit. For weeks, I had felt like I was drowning. I had felt the weight of the lawsuit, the shame of the public accusations, the fear of losing my license. I had felt like a character in a story Harper was writing, a villain in her twisted fairy tale. But standing there, holding that letter, I realized the pen was back in my hand. I walked inside. I didn't go to the kitchen. I went to the living room, where I kept the black book of evidence. I opened the binder. I punched 3 holes in the nursing board letter. I clipped it in, right next to the printout of Harper's texts plotting to destroy me, and the email from Franklin Pierce exposing his son. It was a thick binder now. It was heavy. It weighed 5 pounds of cold. Hard truth. You wanted a paper war. Harper, I whispered to the empty room. You wanted to use the system to hurt me. I ran my hand over the smooth plastic cover of the binder. Well, The system just wrote back. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It was too heavy for that. It was the grim, ironclad satisfaction of knowing that when we walked into that courtroom for the final showdown, I wouldn't need to raise my voice. I wouldn't need to cry. I just needed to open this book. The tide had turned, and the water was rising fast around Harper and Landon. The courtroom smelled of floor wax, old paper, and stale anxiety. It was smaller than I had expected. A windowless box of wood paneling that felt less like a theater of justice and more like a place where mistakes came to be buried. I sat at the defendant's table next to Michael Trent. My hands were folded in my lap, gripping my fingers so tightly the knuckles had turned white. Behind me, I could feel the presence of my army. Monica was there, sitting up straight with her arms crossed. Nurse Val had taken a shift swap just to be here, wearing her street clothes but carrying the same steely resolve she wore in the trauma bay. And Mrs. Calloway, bless her 80-year-old heart, was sitting in the second row wearing her best Sunday hat, looking ready to hit someone with her purse. On the other side of the aisle, the benches were sparsely populated. Harper had brought two friends I vaguely recognized as bridesmaids, girls who looked uncomfortable and kept checking their phones. Landon sat behind Harper. He looked terrible. His suit was wrinkled, his hair was thinning, and he had the twitchy, shifting energy of a trapped animal. Notably absent was Franklin Pierce Sr. The checkbook had closed. The patriarch had washed his hands of the mess his son had created. Harper walked in. She was wearing a beige cardigan and a modest skirt, flat shoes, and minimal makeup. It was a costume. She was playing the role of the humble, downtrodden sister, the Cinderella who had been locked out of the castle by the wicked stepmother. She refused to look at me. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Holloway entered. She was a woman with sharp eyes and a face that suggested she had heard every lie ever invented and was impressed by none of them. Harper's lawyer, a man named Mr. Davis, who had clearly been hired quickly after the expensive firm quit, stood up. He launched into his opening statement. It was a performance piece. "Your Honor," he began, his voice thick with manufactured emotion. "This is a simple case of equity. We have here a young woman, Harper Hernandez, who has been systematically cut out of her family legacy. Her mother, in a state of decline, was manipulated by the defendant, a woman who used her medical access to isolate a dying woman. Sydney Hernandez is not just a sister. She is a gatekeeper who has hoarded the family home, leaving her younger sister with nothing but debt and a broken heart on the eve of her wedding." He pointed at me. "We are asking the court to right this wrong, to partition the property and give Harper Hernandez the fair share she's entitled to by blood and by moral right." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but Michael placed a hand on my arm. "Steady." His touch said, "When it was our turn." Michael stood up. He didn't use adjectives. He didn't point fingers. He picked up a stack of paper. "Your Honor," Michael said, his voice cool and precise, "the plaintiff relies on a narrative of emotional victimhood. We rely on documentation. The defense contends that this lawsuit is not an attempt to seek equity, but a malicious abuse of the legal system designed to extort money from the defendant to cover the gambling debts of the plaintiff's fiancé." Harper's head snapped up. Landon flinched. "Exhibit A," Michael said. "The last will and testament of Betty Hernandez. I direct the court to the handwritten addendum, dated 9 months prior to her death, when her primary physician certifies she was fully lucid." He read from the page. "I am leaving the house to Sydney because she is the only one who will protect it from men like Landon Pierce. The decedent was not manipulated," Michael continued. "She was protective." "Exhibit B," Michael said, producing the affidavit from Dr. Moreno. A sworn statement from the decedent's oncologist confirming that Harper Hernandez visited her mother a total of 3 times in the final 6 months of her life, for an average duration of 20 minutes per visit. The allegation of isolation is disproven by the plaintiff's own absence. "Exhibit C," Michael went on, relentless. A statement from Mrs. Martha Calloway, a neighbor, who observed Mr. Landon Pierce photographing and measuring the property line while the decedent was still alive inside the home, discussing demolition and subdividing the lot. Harper was shifting in her seat now. The humble victim mask was slipping, replaced by a look of panic as she realized that family secrets look very different when read aloud by a lawyer in a quiet room. "But, Your Honor," Michael said, pausing for effect, "we do not just have documents regarding the estate, we have evidence regarding the motivation for this suit." He pulled out a small USB drive. "The plaintiff claims she was coerced. We have a recording of the conversation that took place at the Ironwood Grill on November 19th. This recording was made legally under the jurisdictional exception for public venues." The judge nodded. "Play it." The audio was tinny but unmistakable. It cut through the courtroom air like a knife. Harper's voice, "If you do not sign, Landon has said we will sue, and you will lose the family." Landon's voice, "We will bury you in legal fees. This trust is your lifeboat. You cannot afford a war with us." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. I watched the judge's face. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed as she looked at Landon. She was listening to a man threaten to weaponize her own courtroom to bankrupt a nurse. Judges do not like being used as weapons for extortion. "And finally," Michael said, turning off the recording, "we submit Exhibit D, the forensic recovery of text messages between the plaintiff and Mr. Pierce, dated November 18th. Michael put the transcript on the overhead projector. The text messages loomed large on the wall. Harper, "I will message Val too. I will play the worried sister card." Landon, "Mention drugs. The board has to investigate if you say drugs." The plaintiff conspired to file a false anonymous complaint against the defendant's nursing license, Michael said, his voice hard as iron. "They attempted to destroy her career to force a settlement. And here is the letter from the State Board of Nursing, dated last Friday, dismissing that complaint as baseless and vexatious." He slapped the board's letter onto the table. It was the final nail. Harper was crying now, but these weren't the pretty, manipulative tears she used on Instagram. These were the ugly, blotchy tears of someone who has been caught. Landon had his head in his hands. Mr. Davis, Harper's lawyer, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. He stood up for a redirect, but he had nothing. The evidence was overwhelming. He tried the only card he had left, emotion. He called me to the stand. I walked up to the witness box. I swore to tell the truth. I sat down and looked at my sister. She looked back at me, her eyes pleading. "Save me." Her eyes said, "Be the big sister. Fix this." "Ms. Hernandez," Mr. Davis asked softly, "despite all these documents, despite all this anger, do you love your sister?" It was a trap. If I said no, I looked cold. If I said yes, he would argue that families should share, that I should be generous. I looked at Harper. I thought about the nights I rocked her to sleep. I thought about the money I gave her for her first car. And then I thought about the anonymous complaint that could have cost me my license. "Yes," I said clearly. "I love her. That is why I paid her rent 3 times when she lost her job. That is why I co-signed her student loans. That is why I offered her $15,000 of my own savings for her wedding." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "And because I love her," I continued, "I cannot let her continue to use me as a bank. I cannot let her destroy my mother's legacy to pay for a mistake. Sometimes, loving someone means saying no." Mr. Davis sat down. He knew it was over. Judge Holloway cleared her throat. She didn't need to recess. She didn't need to deliberate. She shuffled the papers on her bench, aligning the edges with a sharp tap. "Stand," she ordered. We stood. "The court finds the evidence presented by the defense to be overwhelming and credible," Judge Holloway began. "The last will and testament of Betty Hernandez is valid. The request for partition is denied. The property belongs solely to Sydney Hernandez." She looked over her glasses at Harper and Landon. "Furthermore, this court finds the nature of this lawsuit to be frivolous and malicious. The evidence suggests a coordinated effort to harass the defendant and abuse the legal process for financial leverage. Mr. Pierce, Ms. Hernandez, using the Superior Court as a tool for extortion is an insult to this bench." Landon shrank into his suit. I am dismissing the plaintiff's claims with prejudice, the judge ruled, and I am granting the defense's motion for legal fees. The plaintiff will reimburse Ms. Sydney Hernandez for 60% of her legal costs incurred in this defense. The gavel banged. It was a sharp, wooden sound that echoed like a gunshot, ending the war instantly. Court is adjourned. Harper let out a sob. She turned to Landon, but he was already moving. He grabbed his briefcase and practically ran out of the courtroom, pushing past the few friends they had brought. He didn't look at her. He didn't check if she was okay. He just ran. Harper stood there, alone in her beige costume, trembling. I walked past the bar. Monica hugged me so hard my ribs cracked. Val high-fived Michael. Mrs. Calloway nodded approvingly. "You did good, kid," Mrs. Calloway said. I walked toward the exit. I had to pass Harper to get to the door. She stepped in front of me. Her face was streaked with mascara. She reached out a hand to touch my arm. "Sid," she whispered. "Please, Landon. He just left me. I don't know what to do. The wedding is canceled. I have so much debt." I stopped. I looked at her hand hovering near my sleeve. "We are still sisters," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "You won in court. Okay, you won. Can't we just go back? I need you." I looked at her. I saw the little girl I used to protect, but I also saw the woman who had tried to get me fired. I saw the woman who had called me a thief online. The bridge wasn't just burned, it was gone. "We have shared blood," I said, my voice calm and devoid of anger. "But sisterhood is a choice. Harper, it is a set of actions. You didn't choose me when you sued me. You didn't choose me when you tried to take my license. You chose a lawyer, and you chose Landon." I stepped around her. "The court just confirmed your choice," I said. "Goodbye, Harper." "Sydney," she wailed behind me. "I am your family." "We share blood," I repeated, not turning back. "But today, I didn't choose you." I pushed open the heavy oak doors of the courtroom. The hallway was bright. Sunlight was streaming in through the high atrium windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was quiet out here. The noise, the drama, the lies, they were all behind me, locked behind those double doors. I took a deep breath. I walked out of the courthouse, past the fountain, and down the steps to where Elliot was waiting with the car. The air tasted like the ocean. It tasted like freedom. The story was over. And for the first time in a long time, the page in front of me was blank. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope it resonated with you as much as it did with me when I wrote it. I would love to hear your thoughts. Are you listening to this in your car, at work, or maybe winding down for the night? Let me know in the comments below. And please remember to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people.